Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Spiritual American. My name is Dr. Ann O'Hare, and I'm your host. And today we will be talking about overwhelm. I know this is probably a big topic, but before we get started, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. As you know, that helps YouTube get this content out to more and more people. And of course, please consider sharing with your friends and family as well. So, overwhelm. I have a little experience with this. In the last episode, something happened and I shared the inner workings of the spiritual effort that happens once you start seeing things about your personality that are coming up that you want to change. I'm going to do the same thing today with overwhelm. First, I'm going to describe, I can give a clinical definition of what is overwhelm. It's when you feel, or you can say stress, right? When you feel that your internal resources are not enough to deal with the situation at hand. That sounds great. In my experience, overwhelm shows up and it's a very self-perpetuating experience. For instance, let's say I am trying to write a letter or I'm trying to work on something on the computer and someone keeps talking to me. Or I'm trying to, and I grew up with this one, you're trying to watch a movie and somebody makes a sound and everybody attacks you for making a sound. But feeling like you need everything to be just so in order to be stable. And then when something changes, there's this feeling of being overwhelmed. Sometimes it might be more than one thing that changes. Maybe the situation has gone in a direction that you didn't even anticipate. And maybe in that moment, there's a feeling of like frozen, not knowing what to do. In my experience, overwhelm is really anger because I'm angry at the situation for being not under control. So I'm going to say that again. In my experience, overwhelm is actually an expression of anger because the situation is no longer what I would consider to be in my control. So maybe you have had that experience before. Maybe that happens all the time for you, or a lot of times, where something changes and there's kind of a feeling of frustration. Or I want to say that there are a lot of things in life that we have kind of accepted as normal or expected. Getting angry, getting frustrated, feeling overwhelmed, feeling depressed, feeling anxious. I'm not saying that they're bad or wrong to feel that way. It's a phenomenon. We have it. It's here. What I would like to say is that it is possible to begin to work on dissolving these experiences. We don't have to have them. It is possible to remain calm and remain in control of oneself, even though something is changing on the outside. So I'm going to describe a situation where I felt overwhelmed, and then I'm going to describe how now I'm trying to stop the expression of that overwhelm. I have to say this. What I'm talking about is not normal, let's say. Normal meaning what everybody thinks is the way that it is. People get angry, they say they're sorry. Okay, the next day they're angry again. People feel frustrated. They say, oh, then they feel better a few minutes later. Then the next day, then next hour, they're frustrated again. I feel sad. I feel bad about myself. I feel guilty. I feel regret. I feel upset about this. I worry about this. It's one thing after the next. It is normal because we all experience it, but spirituality gives us a chance to actually dissolve those experiences. I talked about one in the last episode about the self-critic. So now I'm going to talk about the overwhelm. So I was trying to do something, do some recording, actually. And with recording, it requires, for those of you who know, but if you don't know, that's okay. It requires quite a bit of preparation. So, I have to get dressed. I have to get the lights. There's a bunch of things that have to get set up before I sit down to do recording. So you have to set up time for that. It's very difficult to say, okay, well, I'll just record now. No, you have to actually set aside time. So I set aside time and I was finally got down to got everything set up and now I'm going to get ready to record. And then people in my house started coming in. Now they know I'm recording and they're not making a lot of noise. It's just that if somebody's walking around, like imagine if, one of the podcasters and somebody just like came walking through. It's like, it just doesn't work. You have to have the space has to be quiet so that you can do the recording. So in that moment, I was trying to stay peaceful because I know I'm trying to work on this now where I'm not acting out any feelings of frustration or overwhelm or whatever, certainly not towards the other people. But at the same time, I still have to take care of myself, right? So I'm trying not to say anything. And then I tell myself, I'm talking to myself, okay, you can always cut this out. Don't worry, keep rolling. You can always edit this out later. So I'm waiting. So then afterwards, I didn't say anything. But then my husband came in and he was looking at me and he goes, "Are you okay? How's the recording going?" And I'm like, "Okay." And of course he can read that something is going on. So I ended up telling him that I got interrupted or whatever. I wonder if I could have just not told him. And this is what I want to talk about with overwhelm. Is it possible for us to weather the storm without telling anybody, without complaining, without causing a scene, maybe, whatever you want to call that, when you start expressing frustration to others, or maybe feeling angry, or maybe having an emotional outburst? Is it possible to deal with the storm that's going on inside without letting it come out? And the thought came to me, it's like the little Dutch boy with the finger in the dam. Is it possible? I'm telling you today that I wasn't able to do it in that situation. As soon as he asked me, I basically expressed it or just talked about it. But with overwhelm, I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to see if I can deal with it the next time something happens. And I'm inviting you to come along with me on this journey of discovery, that the next time something happens where normally you would feel frustrated or express frustration or complain or something like that, I'm inviting you along with me to see if you can weather the storm. I'm going to see if I can weather the storm and wait till it passes and then just go on and not say anything. I want to talk about how I grew up. I grew up in a house where everybody was, raising their voice or yelling or expressing themselves. And even in the culture that I grew up with, maybe it's my generation, or I grew up in the Northeast in the 70s and 80s. So my age group right now, maybe you can relate to this kind of communication, that everything was emotional communication, very self-expressed, especially anger and everything like that. So I'm now going to try to see if I can manage it internally. So where does the overwhelm come from? Overwhelm, I'm going to say, means that I can't manage my own emotions. It really doesn't have anything to do with the situation. Now, I've been talking for about maybe 10 minutes, and now what I just said was it. Overwhelm is really that I'm not able to handle my own emotions. It has nothing to do with the situation. So what I'm suggesting now and what I'm going to work on, and I'm, again, inviting you to come with me, is see if next time, if you feel like that reaction coming up, if you feel like everything's going different than it's supposed to, or maybe you feel all of a sudden like there's too much going on. See if you can calmly sit with the storm inside yourself and use the power of silence. Become completely silent inside. I'm reminded of Jesus, actually. This is one example, but Jesus put his hand up against the storm and the storm stopped. So in spirituality, we have what we call bodiless stage, which means that it's complete silence. It's absolute silence. Everything is gone. There's no movement. There's no thinking. There's no bodies. There's no world. There's nothing. It's just me, quiet, silent, still. Light. I'm light and there's nothing else. So would it be possible for me to do that, to use that power of silence while the storm is going on? I can tell you, I've been able to do that in other situations where there's been some emotional, but never in that moment where in the past it would have been, I feel justified to express that frustration or that complaint or that outburst, the emotional outburst. I feel justified. That seemed like normal behavior. But can I weather the storm? Can I stop it? Or if I can't stop it, can I remain still while it's happening and not express it? The reason I'm doing this, I'll end with this. We eventually want these things to stop. The name of the episode is Facing Overwhelm. Face it with silence. It's storming, but I'm still. And I'm not going to speak. I'm not going to act out. I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to blame. I'm not going to beat myself up. I'm not going to feel bad. I'm not going to get stressed out. I'm not going to overeat. I'm not going to undereat. I'm not going to take drugs. I'm not going to, all that stuff. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to be quiet and still and see if I can be that little boy with the finger in the dam, if you want to say, or be like Jesus and put my hand up, the silence, and let the storm be there. In lesser experiences, I know that this works. But I can still see that there's still many times where I find myself talking about things, maybe not complaining negatively, but definitely talking about things that maybe I don't have to. So I'm going to invite you all to think about this. And let's do a moment of reflection before we finish today and see if this is something we'd like to work on. So sitting quietly, take a look for yourself. First reflection is, do I get overwhelmed? Do I find myself in a kind of overwhelming emotional state in different situations? Just notice for a second if that happens. And if you can think of one situation, then think of that situation. Second reflection is, what did I do? What was my behavior when that happened? Was I yelling? Was I complaining? What was I doing? Was I acting out? Was I withdrawing myself? Was I slamming doors? Was I beating myself up? What was I doing in that moment? What was my response to that emotional overwhelm? Third reflection is, would this be something that I would be happy to get rid of? Is this something that I would like to finish in myself? And then finally, just reflect for a moment, whatever visual you would like to have, whether it's, I'm using Jesus with the storm, or you could use the little boy with the dam, or maybe a storm, like if a hurricane comes and then afterwards there's this absolute peace after the storm. Is it possible to have the peace in my awareness while the storm is there, and have the courage to not let it flow out into my speaking or flow out into my behavior. All those things that were there before, maybe I thought was normal, but I don't want to be like that anymore. So is it possible to remain still and silent while the storm is going on and with the faith that it's going to pass? I mean, this too shall pass. We've heard this before, but I'm trying to bring it now for myself and for everybody who's listening, bring it to actual practicality. Can I do this? I say we can. I've done it in smaller circumstances. I know it works, but like I've said, maybe it's time to maybe take it to the next level. So I will leave it there. I hope that that's given you all something to work with and to try. And maybe with overwhelm, maybe if it's too much, maybe try it with a little upset. If you have a little upset one day, see if you can use silence instead of acting out, instead of going forward. See if you can keep your emotional self under control until the storm passes. So I will leave it there. Remember, our slogan is heal, empower, and serve. Until next time, take care.